All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I am Deontay Tyson. I'll be moderating this workshop today as we learn about navigating the academic job search, decoding higher education search committees. All right. Today's workshop is going to be presented by Dr. Marlynn Jones. She's a 30-year vet in higher education administration. She has a JD degree from the University of Miami and has spent 17 years as an adjunct professor specializing in sports administration. Outside of the classroom, she's crafted lots of impactful training programs, topics such as NCAA compliance, Title IX compliance, conducting legal faculty and staff searches. She's dedicated to shaping the career landscape and is evident in her dynamic and interactive approach to fostering a comprehensive understanding of the job search process. She's the founder of Career Skills Architect, and she shares the trade secrets she learned from working with hundreds of higher ed search committees to help decode the excel in every interview you encounter. So, if we would give her a virtual round of applause as she comes to present on navigating the academic job search, decoding higher education search committees. Dr. Jones?
Higher education management merry-go-round. We've all been on it. It's exhausting. It gives you a headache. I decided that I had to figure out how to get off of that merry-go-round. You see, I kept going to interview after interview, and I was being told that I presented well and that my credentials were outstanding. But interview after interview, another candidate was selected over me for a position. It was so frustrating. I was just so discouraged. And I didn't know what I could do to get out of that merry-go-round. I saw my peers sprinting past me to positions, becoming directors, becoming assistant vice presidents. And I was stuck as an assistant director trying to figure out what I needed to do. I started doing research and I discovered that the peers that were advancing past me had participated in professional development training programs. And in those programs, they were able to get mentors, they were able to get sponsors, and they were able to learn tricks and tips about the interview search process that I just didn't know. Well, I still felt that I was stuck on that merry-go-round because I didn't think I could afford to take the time off of work, to pay for the travel to the programs, to then take my daughter out of school. I didn't think I could do it, but I continued doing research. And when I discovered the salaries of those higher level positions compared to my then salary, I knew I couldn't afford not to. So I went to my credit union. I got a credit card and I charged some training. 1 year later, a position that I had interviewed for, that person left the university with no notice. And they left a lot of work that was just open. And I was moved into the position without an interview because of the skills that I developed in the professional development training that I had invested in. And I received a 10x return on my investment. And I want to show you some things that you can do that will help you get off that middle management merry-go-round for good. Search committee members are just people who are faculty members and who are staff members. Did you know that most of these search committee members, they don't receive any additional compensation, they don't receive any course releases, They still have to go to all of the same faculty meetings, all of the same university committee meetings. They still have to meet with all of their student groups, all of their office hours, and perform all of their committee service. So they're still performing their 40-hour-a-week job, plus reviewing resumes, reviewing CVs, reviewing research projects, reviewing papers and writing samples, in addition to their regular work. Some of the pet peeves that have come out of my work with these committees are finding applications with typos. You know, working in higher education, that you hate seeing emails with typos. You hate seeing students provide you work with typos. Now imagine an application for someone who wants to be your colleague at an educational institution and it has a typo on it. Or my favorite, the cover letter that has the wrong institution's name. And if you find it necessary to send in an application that doesn't have all of the parts that have been asked for, you can at least explain why in the cover letter so that they understand why you felt you could submit an incomplete application. People who lie about their credentials are really looked at sideways. So you'll lie about one thing, you'll lie about anything. And when they become really excited about an applicant and they're really excited to pass this person along to the hiring manager, and then their references are blah, they feel like they've exerted all of this energy and effort into somebody, and they've gotten really excited about them. And now they don't feel like they can put their full effort behind them. So I'm going to provide some tactical tips for your successful interviews going forward. And the number one thing is to stop selling in the interview. If you've been offered the interview, you've done your selling already. You've sold them through your cover letter, through your CV, and any other materials that you had to provide, that you are an excellent candidate for this position. So now your job is to showcase what they want to buy. And you know what they want to buy because they've outlined it in the job description. And you found out what they want to buy in your research because you've researched all of these different areas on the screen. Particularly, you've looked at their social media so that you know what's currently happening at the university or the educational organization and what they're highlighting. And you've looked at their strategic plans so you know where they're moving forward. Now, who's on your current career advancement team? Who can tell me who's on their personal board of directors?
Feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and answer.
This isn't a lecture. Come on. So I'll have to interpret the silence as you haven't put together a career advancement team or personal board of directors. And that's one thing you're going to have to do if you're going to stand out over your peers. You need to have 3 to 5 people that you know are going to give you honest feedback, who are going to be able to tell you all of your strengths as well as challenge you on the areas that you need to strengthen so that you can become a better candidate for positions. So this should be your number one homework assignment, is making sure that you have coaches available for different areas. I used to think that I didn't need a coach. I used to think that I had degrees, I went to school, I could figure it out. But my day-to-day career was going well, but my business that I was working on to promote during my retirement was struggling. Then last year, I invested and got some coaches. I ended up with 5 different people that I now have on my team. One helps me with content, one helps me with marketing, one helps me with social media, one helps me with being able to interpret messages for different groups, because the way you speak to students is different from the way you speak to faculty. Excuse me. I apologize. I've been substitute teaching with first grade. And I picked up a few little germs. So luckily we're virtual and I won't get any of you sick. So to simplify the interview process, I want you to see yourself as a reporter for station WIIFM. That station, what's in it for me? And I want you to see every person on that search committee as a member of the audience that you're reporting for. Excuse me. You're going to report to them in sound bites, stories, and snippets, just like a news reporter does. You're going to make sure that as you respond to questions, that they're in sound bites and stories so that they're memorable, and that they're in snippets so they're digestible. You're going to convey to each member of, excuse me, I'm so sorry. You're going to convey to each member of that search committee what hiring you will mean to them. Most importantly, that their daily lives will be easier by adding you to their team. That you are going to have a positive impact on the lives of the students that they serve. Having you on their team will benefit and complement the research that not just they are conducting as an individual, but the research that is going on in their department. And that you are going to be able to have engaging conversations with visitors to the department, to prospective faculty members that they are trying to bring aboard, and most importantly, to prospective students that they are trying to add to the department. So we know in education there's always testing. So I want somebody to tell me an answer to a common interview question based on being a news reporter. So who's going to come off mute and volunteer? Remember, this is not a lecture. Now is the time to work out the kinks so that when you're in a real interview, you're better. All right, I guess I'll have to go with my moderator. so that we can show them how it's done, and then maybe somebody else will join.
All right. What you got? I'm ready.
All right. So, based on being a news reporter, how would you answer the typical question, tell me about yourself?
My least favorite question in an interview. Um, let's see. I would probably go with, as a news reporter, well, I'll give you a story. That would probably be one of the things that I go with. I know stories are big and they show relational. So you want an example of one or just the method?
Yes, an example.
Okay. Um, let's see. I'm going to make up something. All right. I am I am a passionate educator who started educating at a very young age as the oldest of 15 siblings. I was always working with my younger siblings to show them and teach them different concepts along the way. As I got older, I really began to fall in love and really realized I had a passion or a knack for it and that I was good at it and really wanted to pursue a career in education.
Now, what that story told me, one, I'm going to remember it because you're one of 15 siblings. Not many people have that many siblings. So, when it's time for us to get together as a group, maybe 1 or 2 weeks later, I'm going to remember that. I'm not going to probably have to refer back to my notes. The best thing is with that story, you told me you started teaching your siblings, and that ignited your passion to lead you to go into education later. So that tells me you didn't just wake up one day and go, poof, I'm a teach because nothing else has worked out. You're teaching because it's something you want to do. And so that means to me that you're probably coming here because this is something you want to do, which means that you'll probably stay. Okay. Somebody else? We got the shy bunch this morning. Okay. We'll continue on. Panel interviews. The main thing to remember about a panel interview is inclusion. You're going to have 3 to 5 different people, sometimes as many as 7, talking to you at a time. And while one person will be asking the question, everybody on the panel needs to know the answer. So you have to find a way while you're answering the questions to make sure that they all feel included. And that can be as simple as making sure that you're making eye contact with everybody on the panel, that you're looking in their direction, that you are acknowledging through a smile, through a head nod, in some way that you're making sure that you let them know that you're acknowledging their presence in the room. When it comes time for you to ask questions of the panelist, you need to make sure that you have a question for each role that is represented. You will have already done your research, as we showed on the prior screen, of the people who are going to be interviewing you. And through your research, you will know how their role is going to interact with the role that you're interviewing for. And so the question that you ask is really like a reporter. It's going to start out as a statement with a question wrapped around the end, because you want them to know that you've done the research, that you understand how the two positions are going to interact with each other. And then your question is going to be probing to get more information beyond what your research has shown. You're also, while you're answering the questions, you're going to be noticing the interaction between the individuals, because certain individuals will be looking at each other or sometimes writing notes to each other. They will either have a facial expression that will show confusion. When you see that, you're going to make a mental note, because that shows when it's time for you to ask your questions, that you're going to need to address that confusion. You don't want to leave the interview with them being confused about anything. If you get head nods where it looks like people are agreeing with you on something, you want to make sure that you ask a question that reinforces that point at the end, so that they leave on a high note. They were excited and they were agreeing with you about something in the middle. So you want to bring that up again at the end. So, decoding success for your panel interview, making sure you create a connection with each role represented. You have a question related to each connection, that you're including all when you're answering your questions, and that you're watching for confirmation or confusion when you're, I'm sorry. Hide that box. When you're addressing each person in your questions that you're asking at the end. Okay, I see that we have a shy bunch. So I'm going to skip this testing and move on to the next section. Presentation interviews. As you move further along in higher education, you're going to have to make presentations as a part of the interview process. They want to see you in action. If you're interviewing for faculty positions, they want to see you teach. If you're interviewing for staff positions, they want to see you present. They want to either see you do a training, or they just want to see how you interact with donors, with sponsors, with faculty, with students, with staff. The main thing that they're looking for is how comfortable you are in front of an audience, how you answer questions, and the biggest thing is how you respond when you get a question that you do not know the answer to. You cannot know the answer to every question. And sometimes they will have people ask you a question that you probably won't know the answer to, just to see how you respond. Remember, interviews are set up as stressful situations because your work life at a university or at an educational organization generally comes with stress. And so they want to know on the front end how you handle stress and how you respond when you can't answer a question, when something throws you off, gives them an insight as to the type of colleague you're going to be when you're in a stressful situation. A lot of times, the best thing to do while you're figuring out an answer is to start with being truthful. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, but based on my experience and based on the things that I have done, I think a good solution would be, and come up with a solution, present it. Before you leave, find out the name and the contact information of the person who asked the question. When you leave, find out a plausible solution to the question they asked. Email them with that answer and copy the chair of the search committee. That shows that you're thorough, that shows your research skills, and that shows that you're not going to leave things undone. So for your presentations, precision timing is the most important part of your success. I had an interview once at a top research one institution, one of the largest in the country. It was for a position as an assistant dean. And I had a presentation. It was supposed to be a 30-minute presentation. I was using the clock on the wall in the room to keep the time. I didn't realize until about midway through that that clock was broken. I went over my time. There was not enough time for questions and answers. The dean said, well, we really don't have time for you all to ask her questions, but I'll go on and take one or two. Why don't the rest of you catch her in the hallway during the rest of the day so you can get your questions answered? I guess you can figure out I didn't get that job. If you can't take care of timing in the interview, they are not going to believe that you're going to take care of timing and deadlines on the job. Always, always, always have your own timing device with you, and always, always keep track of your own time and make sure that there's time for questions and answers. There were about 35 to 40 people in that presentation with every area of the university represented. Those people did not have time to catch me in the hallway to get answers to their questions. Precision timing is the most important part of a presentation during your interview. Respond to your questions with authority. Make sure that you sound like the expert and the authority. Don't answer questions like you think you kind of know the answer and maybe this is the right answer. You answer questions based on your experience, based on your ability, and based on your knowledge. And you present your answers so that people know that you're the expert on this area. And you have a plan for answering the questions that you can't answer. And most important, make sure that the majority of your presentation is done in a conversational tone. A lot of people get up and present and are robotic. The ear can't listen to that and process it but for so long. So make sure that you realize these are people. These are future colleagues. These are future students. And you want to have a conversation with them during your presentation interview, just like you will have a conversation with them if you're chosen to be their colleague. Meal interviews. The main purpose of you participating in a meal interview is the employer wants to make sure that if they include you in meals with prospective faculty, with prospective donors, with current donors, with members of alumni council, with members of the boards of trustees, that you're not going to embarrass them. If you're not familiar with these two charts, please take a screenshot, please take a picture, please familiarize yourself with the casual and the formal place settings, that you know which knives and which forks to use and which glasses, so that you're not putting your bread on somebody else's dessert plate, that you're not grabbing somebody else's water glass.
Dr. Jones, we have a question here.
Sure.
It says, is it appropriate to use icebreakers in a presentation in this environment?
Sure. As make sure that you've included the time for the icebreaker in the overall time that you've been given for the presentation. And I would make sure that the icebreaker is appropriate for the type of audience that you're presenting to. So students would do a different type of icebreaker than faculty would do. If I'm doing it to a board, I probably wouldn't do one. That's a good question. For your meal interviews, these are your no-nos with food. Do not order any food that is messy. That's most of your pastas that are going to have red sauces. No spaghetti. Foods that are really smelly. Things that have a lot of garlic and a lot of onions. Foods that are hard to cut with a knife and a fork. You want to make sure that in the meal interview that the focus stays on you, not on the fact that you spilt stuff all over the table or all over your clothes or, God forbid, all over your potential coworkers. This is also not the time to try foods that you've never had before. You think octopus might be a good deal, but you never tried it before. Wait, don't try it today at the meal interview. You can take your cues off what others are ordering, but if they ask you to order first, keep it simple to a salad and an entree, but don't go for the steak and lobster unless it's a formal dinner and you see that's what others are doing. Never, ever, 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 ever order alcohol. I don't care if everybody else has ordered alcohol. You will not order alcohol. It is not going to show well to the committee. The other thing that you're not going to do during a meal interview is look at your cell phone. If you have a sick child and for some reason they may have to call you, you're going to say before the meal starts, "Excuse me, my child is sick and may need to call me. That is the reason I'm going to have my phone on the table." You're going to have that out there in the beginning. But then you're only going to look at the phone if it vibrates or buzzes. Never, ever, ever look at your cell phone. It will be considered to be rude. Remember, these are people who are giving their time, unpaid, to decide if you can become one of their colleagues. Be gracious while you're waiting for a table. That is a part of the interview. Treat the wait staff with the utmost respect. That is a part of the interview. Don't just talk to the person that is directly beside you at the table. Make sure you include all. They may be having side conversations that do not include you. You're going to smile and be cordial and polite, and you will jump in when you can, just like you would if you were with colleagues you knew at a lunch. And again, you're not looking at your cell phone. Many times, there will be a series of one-on-one interviews. You will be presented with a schedule, and that schedule is going to have you meeting with 5 or 6 people in a row for about 20 to 30 minutes during one-on-one interviews. This is a marathon. This is testing your stamina. This is testing your endurance. You know that in education, we work long hours. When I worked for the Olympic Committee, I was told that we worked from can to can't. You work, you get up and you start working when you can, and you work until you can't work no more. I worked in athletics for 25 years. And when people entrust their children to your care, and yes, they're 18 to 22 years old, but they're somebody's children. When they entrust them to your care and something happens and there's an emergency at home, and I worked pre a lot of cell phones. And even after cell phones, sometimes the parents can't reach their children and they need your help reaching them. And they want to know that you as a colleague is someone who's going to be able to survive a marathon, who's going to have the stamina to deal with the constant pressures that come along with this higher education life. What you have to be able to do is, in your mind, remember, did I already answer this question for this person? Or did I answer that for person number one? And I haven't answered that for person number three yet. Because you should have a checklist of about 5 major points, 3 to 5 major points that you want to make with each person in that interview. And regardless of what the questions are, you're going to make sure that you answer their questions, but you're going to make sure that you also incorporate those answers. I don't know if those of you who are on here today are old enough to remember Sarah Palin, but if you're not, you may want to look her up. She was vice presidential candidate with the late John McCain, who ran for president. And when she really had reporter answers, regardless of what question she was asked by any reporter, she had about 3 responses she was going to give. You've got to remember your responses so that you're not on interview 5 eliminating the answers to questions 2, eliminating your points 2 and 3. Because that person may not be on the search committee per se, but every person you meet with is going to give their opinion to the search committee. So it's not just the members of the search committee that you have to impress. You're being judged and evaluated by every single person that you encounter from the minute, you have a conversation with anybody who works at that organization until the minute you work there. I didn't say until the minute you're selected in this round of interviews, because we know in higher education, people leave and people recycle in different places. So you may not get the job today, but that job is going to come open again, or another job at that organization is going to come open that's better in line for you. And if you do well in this series of interviews, they're going to remember you. And when another opportunity comes, they may reach out and call you without you even having to have an interview. So in a series of one-on-one interviews, you've got to find a way how you, in your mind, remember to keep on task, to answer the questions, but to make your top 3 or 5 key points. Concentrate on having a conversation. You've got to keep the same energy in interview number 5 that you had in interview number 1. That is so important. Every person has to get your best energy, your best energy. You have to smile. You have to be approachable. You cannot be standoffish at all. And your questions to them must be specific regarding how your role is going to collaborate with their role so that they know you understand how you all are going to work together for the betterment of that university. Casual interviews generally are things that you don't even think are interviews. But remember, I said you are always being judged. So when you're walking from one interview to another and they stop to introduce you to somebody along the way, that's a part of the interview process. how you talk to that person, how you respond to that person, how you have a conversation with that person. When you call on the phone to ask a question of who you think may be an administrative assistant, or just how you treat the administrative assistants. When I was calling, getting information regarding my interview with the Olympic Committee, the person that answered the phone and that I spoke to for 2 weeks prior to my interview, who I thought was the administrative assistant, was the person that I was going to report to, who was the assistant director of the department. I didn't know that until I got there. Luckily, it didn't matter because I treated her with the same respect. I think most of us, I hope, still grow up in households where we're taught to give the custodians the same respect that we give the CEOs. And if you remember to do that, and you do that in every step along the way, you'll be okay. But remember, every step counts. Having coffee with somebody. Let's stop. We finished the last interview early. The next one isn't for 15 minutes. Let's stop here and grab a cup of coffee. We're just going to chat. That chat's a part of the interview. They may have finished 15 minutes early, or that 15-minute early may have intentionally been scheduled so that they can see how you respond when the schedule doesn't go as planned. Riding in the car. If someone picks you up from the hotel and takes you to campus, if you ride in the car to the meal, if you're given a tour on a golf cart, all of that is a part of the interview. And the last picture, text messages. How you communicate in a text message chain, whether it's I'm in the lobby or whatever it is, it's a part of the process. I can't find so-and-so. Is it building 15? Is it building 16? Just be cognizant of the fact that that's a part of the interview process as well. For the whole process, understand that you need to show the committee members that you will make their life easier. Will you make their lives easier? Is the question that they have. And you need to answer that question with every comment that you make. You want to make sure that they understand at the end of the process that you're a clear communicator, that you're adaptable to change, and that you're a proven leader, because that's what they're looking for in hiring a colleague. The number one thing you must do is reach the long-term memory of each committee member. After they interview everybody, it may be 1 or 2 weeks before they get together as a committee to go over all of the candidates. And if they have to refer to their notes to remember you and to remember why you should be their colleague, you lose. When they pull up your name and get ready to discuss you, they should remember your story. They should remember your snippets. They should remember all of the short snippets that you have given along the way. Maybe not all of them, but they should remember the key highlights that will say, you know what? This is a person that our students can benefit from, can learn from, and who will be a good colleague here. Because at the end of the day, they want somebody that they will be comfortable spending 8 to 10 hours a day with. That's what it boils down to. Can I spend 8 to 10 hours a day with this person? Can I travel to conferences with this person? Can I go through a crisis and come out on the other side with this person and still be in a good frame of mind? If you need more strategies, I've put together a virtual boot camp. And for all BDN members, from now, today is Tuesday, through Friday, it's $100 off. It's at this website, searchcommitteesecrets.com. It's a little wordier than most websites because I want you to know all of the different things that I'm going through in the 67 minutes about the different tactical maneuvers and strategies that will make you stand out. But right now, I'm going to take questions and I'm going to get out of this presentation mode so that I can do what I haven't been able to do, which is see some faces. So, what questions do you have for me?
I have one, Dr. Jones.
Okay.
What advice would you give someone who is on the corporate side of things looking to transition into higher ed?
Corporations and corporate leaders are being sought out now by higher ed because you bring a mindset of profit. And right now, enrollments are down. They're down at community colleges, which have been feeders to major universities, and are down at universities. The shutdown during COVID has made a lot of people rethink the expense of higher education. And so if you can show that you're coming from the corporate side with some strategies that will help increase revenue for the university, and if you can show how you have some effective marketing strategies for graduate students, because that's where universities make the majority of their money. Particularly, I'm talking about state universities. State universities have to meet specific metrics for their undergraduate students, but where they make the majority of their money is through their graduate students. So if you can show how you can help them to recruit more graduate students and increase their money, that's going to be helpful. If you can also show how you can use some of the strategies and some of the programs that your corporation used to develop some certificate programs that the university can offer as online programs that they can charge for. This will add an additional source of revenue, whether it's a public university or it's a private university. Every university needs more money. And coming from the corporate side, you have been more focused on not just how to generate money, but also how to save money. And so if you can go through the strategic plan of the university, and if you can look at and come up with some strategies of ways to save money. One of the things I did at my last institution is we needed to train, coming out of COVID, a lot of people on the new Title IX regulations. And as people opened back up to in-person training, it's very expensive to take about 10 or 12 people out of town, pay for hotel, pay for food, have all of these people off campus and out of their daily roles. So I got the organization ATIXA to come to our university and do the training for us. We did half a day in the morning, half a day in the afternoon. So the people who were participating wouldn't have to take a whole day out of work, and they wouldn't have to, so they could take a morning and an afternoon, or a morning or an afternoon, and get the training. And they didn't have to use that travel time. So that decreased the time that they were out. They ate at home, they slept at home, and it saved overall money, but we still got the training. So those kinds of cost saving measures that you understand and that you can highlight in both your cover letter and your interview are good things that will help you transition. And then you can show how the things that you've learned will help the students to become better candidates as they're going through the interview process to be hired. And that will help them increase the students that they're attracting to the university, because the students know that they have this corporate person who is giving them real world corporate advice and helping them prepare for actual corporate interviews. So it becomes a cycle. Having you helps get the students better prepared for the corporate interviews and gives them more corporate knowledge. And that's attractive to prospective students because they know that they're going to get that.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Who else? You have to have some questions. You can't know everything. And while I like to think I'm clear, I couldn't have been that crystal clear on everything because I didn't have enough time to just go through a thorough explanation of all of my points. I only got to hit the highlights. So what other questions do you have?
Good afternoon. This is Autumn. My apologies. I missed the first few minutes for professional development. I
That's
wanted to
okay.
hear what university are you with and what is your role, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure. I've worked at a lot of universities. Right now, I'm not at a university. My first 25 years, I worked in athletics. So I worked in everything from marketing and development to compliance. I worked at large Division I universities. I worked at HBCUs. I also worked at a major Hispanic serving university. I've worked in Title IX compliance. I've served as assistant director of equal opportunity and inclusion. I've served as Title IX coordinator, and I'm in the process of transitioning to work with a company that does Title IX and equal opportunity work for universities that either cannot afford to have a full-time Title IX coordinator or who don't have enough cases each year to have one. And so they hire this corporation to get experienced Title IX people to do the work for them. So right now, while I'm waiting to transition into that company, I have been substitute teaching for first grade.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for pouring your wisdom and expertise into us to help ready us for these opportunities.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the last 10 years I spent in human resources working with equal opportunity and inclusion. And one of the things that I had to do was direct the search committees. And in directing the search committees, I had to make sure that they understood all of their legal obligations and the things that could get them sued if they didn't do the process correctly. So I went through and I answered all of their questions, and I got to listen to them sometimes as they were going through their discussions, and I got to let them know what questions were illegal to ask, what things they couldn't. When I was talking earlier about the conversations that you have in the car and the conversations you have while you're waiting for a table at the restaurant, I scared so many people that sometimes you have to start the conversations. But anything that deals with a protected class, they're not supposed to know that you're a parent. They're not supposed to know that you're married. They're not supposed to know anything about your religion, your age. So they can't ask any questions about that. So if you were to ask them something, say you passed elementary school on your drive to the restaurant, and you said, hey, do you have any information you could share with me about schools in the area? All they really can say is that we have good public and private schools in the area, because to do anything else, they would be getting into, they can't ask you like, are your kids in elementary school or high school? Because they're not supposed to even know that you have kids, because then they could be biased into their processing you. So even if you bring it up, they're not supposed to pursue it. So just be careful of the things that you share about yourself. And that's why you shouldn't have pictures on your resume and those kinds of things, because it introduces bias when we're trying to make sure we're eliminating as much bias in the process as we can.
We have about 5 minutes. There are a couple questions in the chat. The first
Okay.
one, what would you suggest to someone who is thinking about applying to a higher education position? And then the second, any suggestions for those not good with small talk?
You are good with small talk. You think you're not good with small talk because these are strangers. I would challenge you. I would ask, do you have problems having small talk with your friends and your family?
No,
Can you
no, I
answer?
don't. No,
No.
ma'am, I don't.
Okay. So you are good at small talk. You just don't feel that you should be talking to these strangers. So the more research you do on these people, the easier it's going to be for you to talk to them, because the more you're going to find out what they like. And you're going to find the more that you know about them, the less you're going to have to talk. You're just going to need to ask a question. So if you find out that their research is on tiddlywinks and you ask them a question about tiddlywinks, they love tiddlywinks so much that they're just going to start talking about it. If you find out that they sponsored a study abroad trip to Spain, and you ask them how they started taking students to Spain, or why Spain, or what's their favorite place to visit in Spain, they're going to start talking. People love to talk about themselves. They just need an intro. Your job is to provide the intro for them to talk. They're going to remember that they had a great conversation with you because they got to talk about themselves. You want them to remember they had a great conversation with you. And they're going to do that when they get to talk about themselves. Then the question about how do you get into higher education, I'm not sure I understand that. Is that talking about coming from the corporate side, or coming just completely from outside of higher education? Or I need a little bit more context. Because everybody came to higher education from somewhere.
Someone with a psychology, who has a doctorate in psychology.
Okay. Where are you working now? In what role? I can't see all of the chat. Okay. Psychology background, PhD. Oh, I'm sorry. The link. I put too many S's. I can't, I've had a colon, can't spell. Search committeesecrets.com. I put an S on the committees. That's why it's not working. My fault.
And I
Search
put the corrected
committee.
one in. in there as well.
SingularSecrets.com. How many colleges use redacted resumes? I don't know the answer to that question. We did run an experiment when I worked at the large Hispanic university, and it is something that I suggested universities do so that you don't get the bias. What I found a lot of was institutional bias. And what I was trying to convey was that if somebody has a PhD in chemistry, it shouldn't matter if that PhD came from Harvard or the University of Florida or Eastern Illinois. It's a PhD in chemistry. And so we tried to get them to redact the name of the person, the name of the university, and the names of each university they went to, so that they were strictly looking at credentials. Now, they kept the names of the journals because that's an academic thing. People look at certain journals are looked at as being more prestigious than other journals. But there is a lot of institution bias out there. Okay, if you're working as a therapist of any kind, especially since COVID, universities need more people with that background. We have so many students who have gone through trauma. What we have to remember is a lot of our students lived in traumatic environments before COVID. And when they were forced to leave their dorms and go back to those environments, they were re-traumatized. And when we came back to campus, we did not have enough people to work with our students. We also found a problem with students who spent junior year, senior year of high school online and then showed up on our campus and were expected to socialize like students who finished high school in a regular high school environment. They did not have coping skills. We had people who were sent to student conduct and my office in Title IX for what were really just roommate conflicts because they had not had to deal with people. What you can do is you're going to be able to leverage that psychology background into higher ed. Higher ed needs you. Higher ed needs you. If you reach out to me, my email address, try, I don't have to, can I put it in the chat? I'm putting in the chat. Send me an email and we can chat and I can try and help you. But higher ed needs you tremendously. Our students are in crisis. Our students need a lot of help. They need a lot of help. I had a student who came to me as a Title IX coordinator, and she told me, and this was a year ago, so I'm not talking in the Stone Age, it's a year ago. She told me that her mother told her that what happened to her was defined as date rape, but she needed to get over it because that's just something that boys do. If this is what her mother is telling her, how is she going to become well? How is she going to become whole? Had she not talked to me in a supportive measures meeting as the Title IX coordinator, and I was able, as a survivor, to convince her that nothing happened to her was her fault, and to get her in touch with our counseling center, that young woman would still be struggling. I'm not saying that she's not having some struggles, because when that's the advice that you're getting from your parent, I don't know what other kind of advice you're getting from your parent. But I was at least able to get her to some help in that moment to at least get her moving forward. So counseling services are definitely needed. Doctorate in business, teaching high school, business ed, civic, and finance. Send me an email. I'm here to help anybody, Black or brown, get in higher ed. My time in higher ed is limited. I'm in the fourth quarter, and I want to help people who are in their first and second quarters strive and thrive so they can help our babies. That's why I've been doing substitute teaching for elementary school, because I want to help our babies. Our babies need it, and they're in trouble. Any other quick questions that I can answer? Please, please do the course evaluations. They help us on the committee with the workshops. We're trying to bring workshops for topics that are going to help you, for topics that are going to help you on your journey. And please follow BDM. I found the organization by accident, but it's a great organization. I wish I had known about it earlier. It's a blessing. Please share the organization with your colleagues. Please share the workshop series. It's going on through April. A lot of good topics. And just invite people to join the organization and share the workshop series.
And as a real quick piggyback, next one is next week, March 13th, 5 Eastern to Pacific. And it's going to be Breaking Barriers to Mental Health in the Black and African American Community. So please.
I'm going to be moderating that session, and I ask you to please share it with your colleagues and please attend. Thank you so much for sharing this hour today. I know there are a lot of other things you could have been doing with your time. I really, really appreciate you stopping by, and have an impactful week.